We have a really special guest on with us today, somebody who's truly near and dear to my heart in the sense of has been just really open, honest, communicative, wanting to help the team, wanting to be a team player. And just when I got the chance to meet him, wanting to just like talk, plug in and see like, how can we help each other, right? And guys, we don't see that every day. Now, where I met Klint, who's on the call with us today, was at the Ignite event that was down in Florida. Now, not to give Klint's story away, but Klint is from or resides in California, if I'm not mistaken. So he flew across the country to get there. It just shows how serious he is about his business and about getting involved, right? So Klint is on the call with us today. And Klint, Nunapreda, how'd I do?
Oh, pretty good, pretty good.
How do you say it right?
Nunapreda, same thing though, pretty much.
Nunapreda. All
That's if
right.
I'm saying it right.
I was close. I was close. Okay. Well, Clint, again, thank you so much for being on with us today. I don't take your time lightly, and you're just amazing to the team. So I appreciate you being on with us.
No, happy to be here.
Thanks. And just to kind of get started, for those out there that maybe don't know a lot about you or kind of your story, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you were kind of doing before Family First Life, and what got you into Family First Life.
Okay, so before all insurance, I was like, I was in the Navy, getting out like 2018. I used to do aviation maintenance. As I was getting out, I was like, I was talking to my financial planner. I was like, hey, what do you recommend doing for if I want to get into planning? Would you recommend going to school? Would you recommend what would you recommend, right? He was like, and this dude used to run a tax firm. So he's like, get your insurance license, get your tax license, and I'll teach you how to do it. So I was going to initially do it as just an intern, just to figure out if I liked it or not. And so I got my licenses to do insurances and taxes. I ended up working with them. He ended up paying me a salary and a small amount of commissions for every set of taxes I prepared. And so did that for a minute, but I was like, in the planning side, the way he'd get people for planning is he would do their taxes, uncover money, and then roll over to an annuity, right? So that's how he used to. That's his lead source. So it's kind of dawned on me, like I gotta wait for this guy to get fat and happy before I even see any. Where am I going to get my clients from? Where am I? I mean, I'm not even working insurance now. I'm doing more tax prep and learning taxes. I'm like, that's not what I came to do. And so, true story. My marriage counselor was like, hey, my grandson does insurance. You should check him out. And so she gave me his phone number, and I reached out to him. He didn't answer his phone, so I looked him up on social media. And she's like, he did like $5,000 in like 1 week. I'm like, no way, right? So I looked him up on social media. He's posting like, he's like, I did 15,000 in 1 month. Like, get out of here, like maybe this is it.
Right.
And started looking into it and just doing like going through YouTube videos. So there's just a ton of YouTube videos of Family First Life, right? And just watching those videos, like, man, I could do this. The stuff that Sean used to preach was like, just go to work, And then you see all the different walks of life coming in here crushing. It's like, I could do it, right? All I got to do is go to work. And so that's how I got it started with Family First Life. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that story. So essentially, so first and foremost, thank you for your service, really and truly in the Navy. I appreciate you. And, I always say now, thank you for my freedom. And coming out of that, I can imagine, you weren't sure exactly what you wanted to do, just like you mentioned. And you kind of saw almost how something else became a lead. You had to wait, and then you were kind of getting paid based off of how that performance was going. So you didn't fully have control, right?
Yeah, no control at all.
And then it sounds like, again, you had both licenses. So you were like, hey, let me check out this Family First Life thing. You watched it. You saw what it was about. Guys, hear what he's saying. Like, Klint watched the same video that like everybody on this call, including myself, watched. Like, we all watched the video, guys. Like, the video works for the right people. Like, Sean being like, you just have to work, right? And Klint being like, I can work, right? Like, that's where like the connect is, guys. So making sure you're sharing that video is absolutely huge. And I love how you're like, you know what? I watched that video. He talked about the amount of money he was making. And I was like, you know what? Like, it sounds like this is something I could do as well. So that's how you came in. I love that.
That's it. Yeah.
And now kind of coming in, it seems like Klint, like your schedule is clockwork. Like, where you're at 2:15, where you're at 8 a.m., what you're doing. talk to us a little bit about how important it is to A, have a schedule, but B, also communicate that, whether that's with, your family, your spouse, your children, so that they can understand the opportunity and maybe why you're doing things in the way that you're doing them.
Yeah, so now my schedule is your schedule, right? You have to stick to it because we're self-employed here. If I start to erode it, uh, how am I going to put food on the table, right? If I'm like, yeah, no, today I don't feel like showing up. Well, you just don't know you got to keep that consistent activity up, no matter what you're doing, and stick to it. Like if my hours are I typically come in around like 6:30, 7 o'clock, but I'm working till whatever time, whether I got soccer or swim, taking kids to swim or soccer, I've got to drop dead time. I'm going to work up until that time. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'll stay there in the seat. Doesn't matter how good or how bad I'm doing. I'm going to stick to my schedule. Um, the consistency is super key here just because you don't know what next week holds. You don't know what it's going to look like. But if I get complacent, like, oh, I had a super good week, I'm going to take the next week off. You get a lot of people get caught up in that stuff because they can take a week off, come back to work, and have a shitty week. Now you're really behind, So it's super key to keep a consistent schedule. My first, like no lie, honest to God truth, my first year here is all in the field, and I used to run 8 to 8 almost every day. I didn't give myself any days off just because I knew I'm building this thing. I'm learning it all.
Right.
Nowadays, you guys don't even have to work that hard. Like with a Zoom room that you guys have access to and your guys' team, you guys don't have to work that hard because you have so many resources like right here in front of you. Whereas I would go through and just get beat up for a few days, a few weeks, you know what I mean? And trying to figure shit out. Well, you can figure it out like right here in real time. That's the resource that you guys have in front of you guys, and so utilize it. That's why I'm super excited about building. I laid off building for a minute, but now I'm super excited because now with these Zoom rooms, you can't compare. Like you can get agents trained up in no time if they're willing to plug in. You know.
For sure. And I love how you said to me, so consistent, right? Like, and one thing you hit on that we see all the time, and I've been guilty of it in my career, right? You take a week off, the next week you come back and you're like, oh, I'm going to kill it this week. I'm just going to like triple my activity, right? Even though that's next to impossible because you already have high activity. And then you're like, oh my God, am I ever going to sell insurance again in my life, right? Like you have an off week. The next thing you know, you're like, I'm going to be broke. And you go into this panic mindset. And from a panic mindset, guys, nothing good ever comes from that because your client can feel that on the phone. Like they can feel it. So don't do that. And another thing that I really picked up on what you said is are you utilizing time zones, Clint?
Yeah.
Because you're on Zoom by 6:37 your time.
Yeah, I used to be on earlier.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, so you're calling what, East Coast Central Time?
Yeah, East Coast Central Time. I don't even really do West Coast because I don't want to work. I don't work that late anymore. Work maybe 4 or 5 o'clock.
I love that. And we have the ability to do that, right? Like you have the ability I have the ability to get on later and work later, right? Because I can utilize the time zone the opposite way. Guys, we all have that same opportunity, but we just need to realize it. Like Clint was like, oh, cool. Now I can call people at 6:30 and it's, 8:30 or 9:30 their time. That works good for me. And then I'm able to be done with my day by 4 or 5 my time, right? So that's a beautiful thing. And like you said, Clint, I was in the field too. And, it's almost like that whole, like I walked to school in the snow, in the 6 feet of snow with my boots on. That's really not what we're saying. But I think really what we're saying, Clint, correct me if I'm wrong, is like, we had to just go out there with like the lead, the financial inventory, and like the computer that we hope connect to Wi-Fi if there weren't paper apps at that point. And we had to just figure it out. Could we call from the home? Sure. But like, you're already in someone's house at that point. You're sitting there with them. Like you got to figure it out. Right. So you're going to get a lot more no's, so to say. Like I know I did. I didn't sell a policy coming into the industry for my first month, Clint. But that was also because I wasn't willing to get feedback, which is something that you brought up heavily. Like, oh yeah, I'm gonna change that. Okay, but you know what I mean? Then I never like did it. Guys, you're getting real-time feedback on that dial team if you're unmuting. Like Klint is unmuted, not because Klint's like, oh, can somebody help me? Like, I don't think Klint needs help based off of his statistically numbers. It sounds like he doesn't. Sounds like he can help all of us though. So it's like, Klint, are you going to be mad if a new agent unmutes over you to get some help?
Not at all. That's why, like, I encourage it all the time. It's like you should be like, I'll mute out midnight. Any new agent comes on, anybody comes on, I'll mute out because it's
Right.
not for me. It's not for the Zoom room. If you guys have been in there for a week or two, I say the exact same shit every time. Nothing changes, right? So we can really help you. Like we can, like you have no idea. Like even the first 30 seconds so important. Like when you're talking to a client, like some people like, oh, I'm gonna get somebody on, I want to have a conversation going, but you don't realize that that first 30 seconds, like some of the most important times when you're gonna catch their attention, get them talking, and that's gonna be a huge help for you guys. It really is. Any positives, like it's not the stuff we can catch.
The
Like,
death pause, right?
yeah. Like I can tell any one of these guys that have been here for a minute can tell what a client's saying to you guys based off just your guys' response. So
100%.
utilize a room.
Yeah, utilize the room, guys. Unmute from the beginning because if we can hear the beginning of the call, we can definitely coach you a lot better than if we chime in the middle of the inventory. We don't really know what was said. So, guys, we empower and encourage you to unmute on there. Like Klint is just setting the example and making sure it's not dead air in there. So, Klint, we appreciate you and so much for that. Now you've hit Hall of Fame 4 times, right?
I just hit it again like last week. I hit it
So is
fifth
that
time like
5?
last week. Yeah, it's 5. Yeah,
Let's go. That's every
yeah.
year you've been here.
Every year. Yeah.
Congratulations. That's freaking
Thank
huge,
you.
guys. So every single year that Clint's been here, he's hit Hall of Fame, meaning that he's helped over 400 families or issue paid $400,000 of annual premium in 1 calendar year by himself. So to some people on this call, you might be like, oh, like that's like a group. No, that's Klint individually. He's hit over 400,000 5 years back to back. So Klint, you were being really humble when we asked how many times you hit it. You were like 4, but it's
I was
5.
like, oh,
He's like, well,
I wasn't
not
sure
yet.
about the numbers. Yeah, I found out
Yeah.
last week. Yeah,
All right. Well,
but it's getting
congratulations.
easier.
That's a huge
Yeah.
accomplishment.
Thank you.
Now being that you hit, Hall of Fame 4 times, coming into Family First Life, your first couple weeks, months, whatever that may have looked like for you, did you hit the ground running or did it take a little bit for you to kind of get used to things and kind of, take off?
I did a lot of studying before. Like, so I took my time going through the material. So I didn't really commit. Like, I was working at another job and I was like, I want to help my guy get through tax season. It's like, all right, I'm not going to leave you high and dry. I'll help you get through this. But when I was helping him get through it, I was coming in earlier so I could leave late. And so I was coming in earlier so I can leave earlier and just kind of focus on FFL. And so I spent a lot of time just studying this stuff, studying the script. I remember watching like Paul McLean's like 8 steps. I wrote it down verbatim. Like I watched the video and wrote it down verbatim. And then I realized that was way too much. But I spent like hours writing it down and just studying it, because yeah, that's what everybody's telling you. Like that's the most important piece of this puzzle.
Right.
Um,
And Clint, I just want to pause you there real quick because I think that that's huge, right? Like you said, you were studying, right? And now you might have been looking at a script, you might have been re-listening to a video and taking notes on it, right? Like I know for me, I basically like transcribed some of my favorite videos onto a Word document because that's how my brain understood it, right? And I think when we can understand the psychology behind why we're saying what we're saying, when we say it, it becomes a lot more powerful, right? So like
100%.
it's like Clint, you might say like, we're going to take that application today, get it sent up. We usually have the approval back in 1 to 5 days. Does that sound fair? And they're like, yes. It's like, you wouldn't know how to just say that or to say it all nonchalant if you're just reading it for the first time. You're going to sound shaky and strained, right? So guys, one of the most consistent things I hear from top producers, and this is a 5-time Hall of Fame producer, and he's been here for 5 years, right? So it's like that speaks volumes. He's saying, I studied the playbook. Like I knew the playbook. And when he's like, Clint, you weren't like studying like the carriers and the products, right?
No, I was, but it was like I think about it now. I did a little bit. I did a lot actually. But now hindsight, like you hear me when I present, I never even talk about the carriers ever. They have no idea until I'm like, sometimes till the end, like, what company is that with again? Right? Because we're solution based, right? We're finding out what are they looking to cover, what are they trying to cover. Like, so now when I'm talking to agents, I'm not even worried about carriers, like not even for a second, because it doesn't even matter. It's what are you going to do to fix it, help them? Yeah.
100%. If you can't be the problem solution oriented person, it doesn't matter if you're going to go America or NLG or any of the companies, that's not applicable at that point. So I love how you said essentially like you came in and you took this thing seriously. You weren't like, oh, I'm just going to see what happens and hopefully everybody gives me the answers, right? Because in the field, like it wasn't like that, guys. Like it wasn't like, hey, I just got off the phone with Charlie and he told me he had to think about it. And we're like, did you follow your script? And you're like, oh, okay, actually, I missed the beginning, right? Like that's not what it was, guys. You have so much feedback, but you just have to be willing to get it. So I love how you're like, hey, when I came in, I took it really seriously. Guys, if you're on here and you're like, okay, well, I didn't, it's like it's not never too late to start taking it seriously, right? Like you just have to decide that. And now kind of mindset around leads. When you came in, how did you kind of view leads? What was your mindset around that? Was it ever negative or what did you think about it?
The leads are solid. The leads are super solid. Like I understood what they were, right? You think about like so when I first started is when we're game time and happy agent leads were the big leads.
Yeah.
That's what my first 400 was off of those in home. But they're super high intent, right? They're coming from social media. So think about what you guys see on your social media. It's all stuff you guys like, all the stuff you guys are interested in, you know? If you're interested in knitting, you see knitting stuff. If you're interested in hunting, you see hunting stuff, whatever it is, right? These guys take it a step further and they fill out their information, beneficiary's name, date of birth, phone number, email, height, weight. So there's not for 1 second am I confused on what they're looking for, right? Um, and the stuff we used to say state regulated final expense, and they're like, so if you read it, you can think it's free too, and we used to have to overcome that, right?
That was a
But
real thing, guys. Very
that
real.
was legit. But never was I confused that that other person filling out that form needed help for their loved ones. There's no question. There's no question. And so if I can get to that root, then I kind of figure out a problem for their solution, right? And so no matter what they tell me, I don't buy it. Like unless I can have a full discussion with them on whether I can or can't help them, that's when I'll resolve it, you know?
Right. So you won't deem a lead dead, so to say, until you know you've had that conversation. They gave you a strong
100%.
yes or a strong no.
Yep,
And guys,
100%. Doesn't matter.
that goes hand in hand with activity, right? Like it's like if you're not an activity-based person, Clint, which obviously you are, you're not going to necessarily call your leads back from a month ago, right? That you weren't able to resolve. But if you are, it's like, okay, I went through all my brand new leads 3 times. Now what am I going through? Then you start going back, and that's when it starts getting fun, and you're picking up sales that you didn't really know that you were going to pick up. But you have to put the activity in to get there, right? So you always had a pretty good mindset around leads because you also came from understanding what a lead was, right? Going from that, tax solution to annuity, you were like, that's a lead, right? That's
Yeah,
exactly what it is.
leads a lead. Yeah.
A lead's a lead's a lead. And here we are, right? So, and talk to us a little bit about your lead spend. Like, what does your weekly lead spend typically look like?
Anywhere from 2 to 3 thousand, right? But I'm trying to do at least 15 to 20 roughly now.
And what do
Sometimes
you,
more.
I was going to say, so like, what do you average issuing out each month?
If it issue, so this year I've taken a lot of time off, so this is kind of nice. Um, but if I'm working, average at least 50 for sure.
At
At
least
least
50 for
50.
sure.
Yeah.
And
Roughly
that's with a
50.
lead spend of somewhere between 9 to 12,000.
Yeah.
So guys, think about the math on that. And like for me, the math is mathin'. So that makes perfect sense. So Clint's not confused about leads. He's investing in his business. He's investing in himself. And it's a repetitive rinse, wash, repeat process that he's like, I got this down. guys, we all have access to the same things. Just like Clint saying, no one's gonna go. I'm not gonna go. None of y'all are gonna go on Instagram and fill out all of your personal information, like beneficiary, height, weight, where you live, all these types of things. If it's not something you actually have, maybe a problem that you're trying to solve, right? Like what comes up on my social media is like every clothing brand in America. You know what I mean? And I know I'm becoming a lead when they're like, enter your email, right? It's like, oh, I'm becoming a lead, right? Like, so it's like, guys, pick up on cues like that, but also realize there's no other way this information would be there unless they filled the form out. So just like Clint saying, nobody can tell him like, I did not fill the form out, because he's like, you put your height as 5'11" and 202 pounds, and you put that Jenny Salisbury would be your beneficiary. It's like, oh, I mean, yeah, I guess I felt like, right? Like then you're able to get down to it, guys. So not for a second did you have that second thought, which I love, and you just invested in your business. You took it seriously, treated it like a business, continue to. And I love that last comment you made, like, well, I took a lot of time off this year, and you still are over $400,000 on the year. So that just speaks volumes about you, Clint. So way to be, seriously. That's awesome.
Even last year, I was like, I don't want to work as much. I don't even care if I hit Hall of Fame.
Right,
like
right.
and I did like 540.
And then he did like 540. So I mean, not a bad year, not a bad year. That's for sure.
So it's been so, and I will say this: when I first started, it was super hard. Like it was hard for months, where I felt like I was just money's going out, money's coming in, like no lie. But I always knew I'm learning this. I don't know everything. I'm putting this giant puzzle together, so many moving pieces. But I understood what I'm building and what I'm learning. Like you have to understand, we don't know. I did not have even close to any of the answers. You should have heard me when I first started. Like in a Zoom room, I'd be so uncomfortable. Like when I started to dial in front of people, every person was staring at me, like 75 plus people were staring at me. And I scrambled my papers and I get all flustered, and like it was nerve-wracking, right? But I'm like, if I want to grow, this is what I got to do. If I want to learn this is what I got to do. It sucks. It super sucks. I understand. I get it. Trust me. I understand it, but it's how it's you to grow.
Right.
You just got to do it.
And Clint, would it be fair to say, like, I feel like for me, after the first like year of being in the business, I started to actually understand things, and it didn't feel that tedious or heavy, so to say, right?
Oh,
Like,
100%. Yeah.
and just like Clint saying, that's when you start like taking appropriate time off that makes sense, and you can jump back on the horse because your numbers well enough, and you're not over there trying to still learn that first set of the process, so to say. I would say we're always learning, but you're not still trying to put that basic puzzle together. You're moving on to that second puzzle, so to say. Once you can put that first puzzle together, understand what you're doing and what you're building as you're learning, that's really powerful. Because the first year, guys, I always tell, like, it's not going to be like a walk in the park. You're not going to be like, oh, that was such an easy day. Like, if you do, it's probably because you didn't call anybody and you made no sales. And that's really not an easy day. Actually, it's a scary day, right? So guys, you want to think about it from an essence of, we're always learning. The first year is supposed to suck. Embrace the suck. And I say that with love. Mine did, Clint's did, but we just embraced it. And we're like, hey, like you said, if I want to grow, I have to do this. And if you want to grow, there's going to be some things throughout this process in the business ongoing that you have to do that you don't want to do exactly that and grow. So Clint, thank you for sharing that, because I think that that's really powerful. It's important to know we don't just walk in and know everything, right? We got to take a step back, take time, effort, and intentions to get where we are now. So I love that. And now okay, so you've heard many new agents hit the phone over the years. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about when a new agent's hitting the phones, what are some of the most common pitfalls you see happen? Because I think it's important for those agents, Clint, that won't unmute or that are unmuting a lot less, to understand, like, oh, they might really be able to help me out there. That's happening to me a lot. Does anything stand out to you?
Oh yeah. A lot of things. And that's just, that's how, but when you said something completely foreign to you guys, right? It's completely normal, but you're not going to know it and the reason why I say mute, right? So we can really help you, because you can come back like, hey, this is what I said. this is what they told me. What do you guys think? Like what you think you said and what you thought you heard are not what really happened 9 times out of 10, right? And so that's why it's important to come off mute. But when we can hear you, they'll hear new agents. They'll pause a lot, right? When you pause, you're giving them back control.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll hear agents, they'll overcome objection. They'll say the right thing they need to say, but then they'll stop.
Yep.
It's like, then they get hit with another objection and they're trying to get over that objection. And then now it's just a back and forth, and that client's going to keep going on forever till they're not done. And so it's important to acknowledge it and then keep it short. You don't have to ramble. That's another thing you'll hear is a lot of people that over explain something, or it's just a quick acknowledge it. So if you ever hear me say, hey, no worries, I understand that we gotta make sure. I work with a lot of people on fixed incomes like Social Security and disability, and I get them affordable coverage. Whenever you hear me say that, I've heard something on their lines of like, I can't afford it, right? So we're just overcoming it and then just keep asking them questions.
Right.
Go
And
ahead.
that's a major key is like, I mean, like Klint, till this day, sometimes I'll do that. I'll be like, that's exactly why I'm calling. It was the form you filled out. You put John as your beneficiary. And they're like, yeah. And then I'm like, yeah. It's like, okay, yeah, keep moving, dude. Like, yeah, ask another question. Is it like, like, okay, and I have your date of birth here as, right? It's like, keep going, follow your script. So just like Clint's saying, acknowledge what they're saying, address it, but then get right back onto your script. Because if you stay there, they're going to stay there too. So whoever asks the most questions wins and stays in control. If you have a client asking you 10 questions and you're just answering them, you're not in control. The client's in control. And that's not a good place to be. So I just wanted to interject there. So that's a big one.
That's a huge one, yeah. And then in maintaining that very, very assumptive, right? We're gonna go through, we're gonna fill an application. Everything you're talking as if you're not asking them for permission for anything. We're directing them. You have to do that. Because if you ask them for permission and it's like, no, 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 I don't want to, no. You have to direct them, you know? It's like, is that okay? No, no, no. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing. Um, you know, uh, that's one.
So like traffic cop, right? It's like,
Yeah,
like you got to tell, like, nope, okay, we're going to take the application today, get it sent up to senior underwriting, and we usually have an answer back in about 1 to 3 business days. Sound fair? Right. And they're like, yeah, right. It's like, but you got to set it up that way. You got to be assumptive from the jump. And you always maintain assumptive, I love hearing you sometimes, like, I don't even know necessarily what the other person will say, but I can tell they're pushing back because you just address it and then you redirect the conversation. You get right back on. And guys, when you can do that, it's like you're actually able to properly resolve your leads. Just like Clint's saying, if you can't have the proper conversation about how to maybe fix the problem at hand, it's not a resolved lead, right? Because you actually didn't go through the conversation. So I think that's huge, guys. So like pausing, right? If you're pausing a lot, you got to get that out of there. It's giving the client too much time to think, and like they're pausing and they're like, this is weird. Then it's like, don't do that, right? Also acknowledging what they're saying and getting right back onto the script is huge, huge, huge. I think a lot of us lose folks there all the time. And then Clint, your tone, actually, yeah, Christina's put in the chat, you maintain the same tonality. I feel like whether somebody's like, Clint, I can't wait to talk to you about insurance, or they're like, hey, Clint, I already have insurance and I don't need any more. And I don't need it. Like you maintain that same tonality. Have you always been able to do that, or what's
no.
helped you do that?
Actually, I just started controlling that like really just this last year. So I had one of my buddies on with who was like, dude, you can tell you're getting pissed. And nobody wants to hear that, right? And so just really being conscious of that. And so it's crazy. I learn stuff on live dials all the time myself. Half the stuff I say I learned from a new agent, and so I'm learning too on there. But yeah, he was like, dude, they can tell you're getting pissed. Like, take it in, dude. I'm like, all right. So then now I'm actively trying to maintain that and just keep level and see. It's just crazy how much that helps. That I don't get excited. I'm just doing the exact same stuff and just lay it out there and kind of see where it goes.
And that
Um,
tonality, guys, it's like, I don't know, like anytime I talk to someone that's just like the same throughout, no matter what, like no matter what I'm on the phone with them about, I feel comfortable. I feel like they're confident in what they're doing. I feel like they're competent in what they're doing and like they're just doing their job, right? Like it's kind of sounds, Clint, like you're just calling like from a benefits office, like that's what it sounds like. Like you're sitting in a state office just calling because you're saying the same thing with the same tone, no matter what they say to you guys. In the beginning, guys, like I'm not like I've taken calls in the beginning and they'd be like, I didn't fill that out. And I'd have a mailer in front of me, right? Which is even worse. And I'd be like, oh my God, but it's the one that you put down, you're 42 years old. Like, do you remember that? And like my whole tone changes. And now like they're nervous because I'm nervous, right? Like people can feel on you. So it's like try to stay monotone, just try to stay steady, right? Whatever, if you're high, stay high. If you're low, stay low. But you should probably stay somewhere in that middle. Like Clint's tonality is like is life. So that's awesome. And I love how you explained to Clint that somebody had to correct you on that, right? Somebody had to be like, bro, like you sound a little angry right now, dude. Like, and you were like, okay, let me pay more attention to that, right? It's like Clint's learning every day too. So am I, right?
every day.
Um, and then so in your process, I feel like everybody on here has had the opportunity to hear you on Zoom. And guys, if you haven't, that's simply because you're not on Zoom and you're not listening, or you're not listening when you're on the Zoom. But Clint, talk to us a little bit about the process of being proactive versus reactive throughout your conversation, and
Yeah.
some maybe like blockers you put up to make sure you can do that.
Oh yeah, like everything, like any one of these scripts you guys look at, they're pretty calculated, and we're saying stuff for a reason, not just to say stuff, you know? Um, so proactive is like initially starting, I want to like I introduce myself and then I'll shoot them my credentials super fast, just so they know who they're working with. I used to go directly into their why, and I'd get hung up on all the time. So I just start peppering with questions like, why is this dude asking me about my kids, my house, how much income I'm making, whatever it is, right? They just hang up on me. So then I figured out, okay, I got to make sure they understand who they're working with, and then what I can do to help them. Why do they want to work with me, right? I talk about so when I send over my credentials, I make sure, and I don't even just send them. That's another, you'll see some people just send them over like, oh, you got my information. All right, we're going to go. That's not good enough with our clients because everybody's telling them, don't give out your social, don't give out your banking, who are you talking to on the phone? Hang up the phone, hang up the phone, right? And it's like, so we have to establish that credibility super fast. So that's why I'm like, make sure you see, and I'll sit there and I'll wait. Unless they're really bad at technology, I'll give them like 30 seconds, you know. But I'll be like, hey, did you get it? And then every time you guys hear me say, did you get it? Did you get anything? I send them a text every time I say, did you get it?
Yeah. To
Because what
try to
I'm
push it.
doing, yeah, well, because it's gonna pop up on the screen. Like, watch your screen. Every time, like, did you get it? Did you get it? Just hitting send. Just because it's super important, right? That
Absolutely.
they have that. Yeah, for sure. And then it gives me the opportunity so I can build their credibility really fast, right? Hey, I'm a broker. I'm state regulated. You're working with a professional. Then I shoot them the carriers I work with to let them know I can really shop for them. I explain to them. And so I just recently started doing this too. I started slowing it down to make sure they understand what I can really do. Because I used to just spit it all out super fast. Like, all right, that part's done, move to the next part. But they have to understand exactly what we're saying. Um, you know, I'm a broker. I get to shop for you. Right? These are all state regulators. No change in the price because a lot of these people are like, oh, I want to shop around. I'm like, hey, I get to do that for you. And then I explain to them each carrier has their own level of risk they're willing to accept. So I'm going to shop for you and kind of figure out where I can get you the best rates. Um, and then I ask them their why, right? And to figure out what are they looking for. If they're not going to tell me anything, they can give me a surface level one and I'll kind of accept it for a second, but then I'm going to dig a little bit more.
Right.
Like, oh, I just wanted to cover everything. A question I started asking recently was like, hey, I'm going to ask some difficult questions That way I can package together a plan that'll fit your needs.
Mm.
And that because before, like, why do you need that? I used to get that a lot more, but now since I started saying that, it allows me to ask the hard questions, and dig into the why a little bit. And then so once I ask that, then I'm like, hey, are you trying to cover burial, cremation, protect, or mortgage? That's also my favorite line if they're giving me any kickback initially starting, just to bring them back into why they filled it. There's a reason why every one of these guys filled it out. If we can bring them back to that place, then we have a conversation going back and forth.
Right.
So I'll try to get that out there, but I'll get that out there and I'll sit in that place for a little bit about, are you trying to cover burial, trying to cover cremation? If they tell me, oh, I don't know which one it is, well, if John found you dead tomorrow, which one do you think he would do? Right? Just the reason why I'm doing this, so I can kind of put a number on what they're kind of looking to accomplish.
Absolutely.
For when they're trying to tell me they want $50,000, like, dude, hey, you don't need $50,000. This because they can't afford it, they can't qualify for it. But this $5,000, it's going to help you guys.
Right.
It's going to help cover your cremation, or that 10,000 is going to help your cremation and for work, whatever it is, right? So I can put a number to how to really help them on what they're looking for. How much is your mortgage a month? Oh, it's $2,000 a month. So that's why we ask those questions, so we can kind of now we're finding a solution for their problem
Right.
with whatever we're going to show them.
And I want to just pause you there too, because that's a lot of good stuff. First of all, guys, yeah, if you don't send your credentials in the beginning and have them look at it, definitely start doing that. That's a game changer. It was for me too, Clint. I kind of used to ask why and then send them, and then they're kind of like, this is weird, right? Wasn't the why I was looking for, so to say. But how you said, I'm going to ask some difficult questions so I can figure out, exactly what it is that you need. I think more often than not, we have those clients that are like, I need $100,000. And you're like, okay, but we're looking to cover your burial, right? Like, you don't need 100, you might want 100, but it's about what you qualify for. And I think bringing people back to that is really important. But because if you start from a place of care, which is what you're doing, right? What are we looking to cover? A burial, cremation, a mortgage, your income? Like what's the deal, right? Like, what are we doing here? That way you're able to properly put the plan together. And like, guys, that's not like just a good one-liner. Like, that's the actual truth. Like, you need to be able to properly put the plan together. If you don't know that they want to cover their mortgage, you're just shooting in the dark, throwing them numbers. That's not helpful. You also can't dig in on why. What would it look like if you died tomorrow? Is Mary able to keep up with the monthly mortgage payment without your income? You're not able to ask those difficult questions if we aren't establishing from the beginning why they filled the form out. That way we can pace with them. Because it sounds like that's how you're proactive, is you're not going to get kickback on the social and the bank because you made sure they checked your credentials. You're not going to get kickback on, I want to shop around, because you're already letting them know, hey, they're state regulated programs. I have all the companies in front of me here, and they're only a difference of a couple of dollars. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I'm going to go ahead and do that for you. So don't worry about it, Miss Mary, right? Because there's only so many objections that we're going to get, guys. Like, and they're typically going to be, I can't afford it, right? I want to shop around, or I don't need it, which, like, I don't need it isn't even like one anymore. I take that one off the table. It's like you're in the social or the bank, right? So it's like, if we're asking these questions on the front end, we're going to be a lot more proactive on the back end. And Clint, would you say that when you're getting to your close, that a lot of people are able to just pick a program, or do you feel like you have to be more reactive at the end? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Most of the time they're picking a program. Yeah, most of the time they're picking. Yeah, but I still get objections at the very end too. You know what I mean? I still get people that go. So I will, even today I got two people that stopped at banking, even though everything I did everything I could possibly do.
Right.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, I should have done this. I could have done this. I could have done this. Because
We're still gonna have
I know
those
close.
days.
Yeah.
Like, but like, it's like important that we're able to be like, hey, I could have done this, right? Because if you're like, oh, I'm perfect, like Patrick just doesn't want to give his bank out, right? It's like, No, like take some accountability, right? Like there might have been something we could have done better.
Yeah,
So
always
yeah,
reflect on like what could I change?
for sure.
Always.
And guys, like that right there is like a major key too. It's like you could do the whole appointment, you could sell it, you could write it, but there still might have been something you could have done better, right? Could charge back and you're like, oh, I didn't even follow up with the client, make sure they got their policy and make sure it was all good. After I sold it, I never talked to them again a day in my life. Well, it's probably going to charge back. So we should definitely not do that, right? So it's like, guys, whatever you're telling your client and setting the expectation, you gotta show up on is kind of my point there. And yeah, we're gonna have those people. I always just say those are the people like the band camp people that weren't gonna give their bank to anybody. They weren't gonna give the social to anybody. They've talked to 20 people, of which all set the table and said they're gonna need those things and still wouldn't provide them. So we are still gonna have those random, just kind of, that's not our client type of deal, right? But it's not gonna be everybody. So that is important to know that Klint doesn't close 100% of the people he talks to either, right?
No.
Absolutely. And just to kind of wrap it up, so are you going to be attending annual convention this year?
Oh yeah, I'll be there. Yeah.
All right, perfect. I didn't ask you prior to the call because I was like, he was at Ignite, so he understands the power of events, right? And the power of getting around people. So, and if you don't mind, Clint, if you could just shed a little bit of light on why you're going to be attending convention this year and how it's maybe helped you in the past.
Oh yeah, because you can get so much knowledge compacted into 3 days. Like you can be hearing from all top producers and top builders just sharing what they're doing to be successful. That was what allowed me to get hit Hall of Fame. When I went to my first convention, I heard like John Wetmore talking about numbers, just reverse engineer the numbers, right? And I was like, oh, I could do this. Yeah, it's easy. I got this. But you get so much value out of there that you can't get in a Zoom room. Even the crazy thing about with Zoom, though, is now I don't get as much training. I used to get 8 hours of training every day when I first started. I'd be driving around from place to place, listening to trainings, like nonstop. Now I get it in the morning for maybe like an hour or two. I'm hitting the gym, but that's it. And then whatever's in the Zoom rooms, and. So it's a huge game changer for you guys.
For sure.
For sure.
And that's true. I used to think the car was like a rolling university. You'd be listening to this podcast, that one, and the next thing you're in the home and you're using that one-liner and it's helping.
Yeah.
So like you said, we kind of have to take that time out, or we're using, we're getting some in the Zoom room, but we also got to get some outside of those income producing hours. So guys, none of us are ever too good to keep learning in this business. Myself absolutely included. Make sure I listen to at least a podcast every day, or I think my mind would go crazy. So love that. And just also, guys, like Klint said, going to convention, you're going to see and meet so many different people that we can't have a human interaction of being able to give Klint a hug on Zoom or high five him or whatever you're going to do, right? But you can have a conversation with him. Hey, how did you go from here to here? Right. And it's like, that's powerful, right? You talked about reverse engineering the numbers when John Wetmore went over that. That was huge for me. I was at that convention as well. And I was like, okay, like this is easy. Like I can do this. I can teach other people how to do this. So leaving there with something that's really valuable, guys, you're going to. The only way you won't is if you're not there, right? So get yourself there, get yourself around people, and it's just going to up your business.
We go, beast mode, get dough, ain't no cheat code, big dog, cheat go, free smoke, game time, we score, we go. Everybody go.